Hi, good evening. Thank you and thank everyone else to be here tonight. So we're going to be hearing first the CAPS budget. Just as a reminder, everything will be the budget presented by a student, and we advise staff and any faculty to be here for support for any of the questions we might have. We have 30 minutes for your presentation. We might ask questions during the presentation and everything, and you guys can switch off. However, if you want to also introduce yourself when you start speaking and when everyone else starts speaking, that'd be really helpful. And then after that, we'll have 45 minutes for a discussion, so that the committee will kind of discuss your budget and ask you a lot of questions, that sort of thing. After the discussion, the committee will then reach a tentative decision. Everything we reach here is just a tentative decision. The final decision will be reached on February 12th at 5 p.m. in the MU ballroom. That's where we'll go through every budget and we'll set a final fee level. Also, if you could send me the presentation afterwards, just because then I'll give it to student media and they're going to put it up online. And also, student media, they're recording everything, and if you don't, try not to touch the mic because it just has feedback. They'll pick up everything anyways. So you can begin whenever you want.
All right. Hi, I'm Andy Vondra. Thank you for having us. I would like to introduce my colleagues, Tim Daniel, Josh Wilmarth, and the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services, Jackie Alvarez. We will start with an overview of our presentation, laying out what CAPS is, what services we offer, and a resume of our achievements and challenges. Tim will be presenting the decision packages, and Josh will be presenting the budget scenarios. To change the slides.
Oh. You want to handle that one, Nick? No, I just probably got it. I think it's probably the black one.
So our mission statement. Counseling and Psychological Services provides mental health counseling to students and consultation, outreach, and education to OSU students, faculty, and staff. We do this in order to facilitate students' academic success, mental health, and personal development, and promote a culture of positive mental health at OSU. At CAPS, we provide different services to meet the needs of students, staff, and faculty. We provide counseling for individuals, couples, and groups. Individual counseling provides you with the opportunity to work one-on-one with a counselor who can help you understand yourself, solve problems, improve your relationships, and resolve different emotional experiences like anxiety and depression. Most students only come in a few times, and 96% report that counseling was very helpful in resolving their concerns. CAPS also offers group treatment. The power of groups lies in the unique opportunity to receive multiple perspectives, support, encouragement, and feedback from other individuals in a safe and confidential environment. CAPS has worked hard to increase their group therapy program to better serve students and increase efficiency. CAPS houses a program called the Mind Spa, which is a unique sanctuary where you can soothe your mind, body, and spirit. A number of different services are offered through this program, including the latest in biofeedback technology, meditation resources, light therapy, and robotic massage chair therapy. Biofeedback technology and light therapy are available on-site and available for checkout. Another service CAPS offers is consultation, which is offered to all OSU community members who may have a concern about another person's mental health. CAPS counselors will talk to faculty, staff, students, and parents about how to best help the person they're concerned about and how to help the person access CAPS services. Finally, CAPS also provides mental health promotion and prevention through classes, workshops, and seminars. Over the past year, we've improved our ability to meet the growing demand for our services. While we still don't have an ideal ratio of counselors to students, the ratio has improved significantly, which has allowed us to serve more students with shorter wait times. The department was able to offer case management services, which offers students access to wraparound care services on campus and facilitating appointments at other offices, facilitating hospitalizations for students who suffer from severe mental health, facilitating referrals off campus for students who need long-term mental health care, and working with the student care team. As of right now, 109 students have used case management services. CAPS made it a priority to increase mental health promotion through the community. In order to achieve this, we've been working with our community partners to identify mental health needs and possible solutions. Some of our primary mental health initiatives our CAPS include sexual assault services, suicide prevention, and stress management. In addition, from 2011 to 2012, CAPS provided 400 workshops, classes, and outreach activities to 15,798 individuals. We anticipate that CAPS will face challenges in the coming fiscal year: after-hours care, marketing, administrative help, and adequate staffing and space. Some areas where we see challenges are in regards to the lack of ability to offer after-hour services. CAPS does not have after-hour counseling available to the OSU community from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. Students experiencing after-hours emergencies are referred to a 24-hour hotline, and that resource doesn't provide any follow-up with CAPS the next day. The department is looking for a way to provide the same idea, to have clinicians available 24/7 and to assure clients gets proper follow-up care at CAPS the next day. We would like to provide this in-house, but costs are prohibited, therefore we need to outsource the service. CAPS has engaged in many various marketing practices in the past, finding ways to communicate with students about mental health that inspires them to learn more about their minds, how they work, and how to keep them in top shape is an aspiration CAPS has had for some time. We know that having a compelling message is essential, but how we deliver the message is equally important. Reaching students where they are most comfortable by using our website, podcasts, videos, YouTube, Facebook, and other social media tools could be a new avenue into mental health and psychological services. To move us forward, we need staff who are trained, innovative, and understand social media, website development, marketing, and communication. Tim will talk about this in greater detail, but we are proposed that we begin to develop a marketing and communication plan by hiring graduate students in business and/or other disciplines who have interest and experience in marketing, communications, and technology that will work for students. We believe if we bring in people who have energy, talent, and experience in these areas, it might move our programs forward. CAPS has experienced a significant increase in our counseling appointments. As a result, we have increased our staff. We have found, as the clinical staff has grown, that the administrative needs of the office have grown also. For several months, our 2 office specialists have been consistently working overtime. Even with this additional overtime, functions that should be performed by our OS2 staff have not been possible. As a result, some administrative support is not provided and either work goes undone or professional faculty spends their time on these tasks. This is unsustainable both because of the cost to our employees' well-being and because it is not a good financial solution. In December, we lost one of our OS2 in part because of our unsustainable workload. CAPS has struggled to do mental health promotion in the ways that would best serve the OSU community because of the lean staffing in this area and lack of expertise. While we have put a great deal of resources into increasing our clinical staff to meet students' needs, we haven't been able to do the same with our mental health promotion. In our current staffing, we are only able to meet the basic prevention and promotion efforts, but we have not been staffed to do the work in a way that has a meaningful impact. Additionally, while many of our clinicians have interest in strong skills in outreach, it is difficult to balance the many roles we are asking them to hold: clinician, teacher, liaison, and supervisor. Some have indicated that they would prefer if we hire a mental health promotion staff, much like SHS does, thus relieving them from the responsibility of doing so many different kinds of work. There would also be benefits to hiring experts in public health who might be better trained and able to lead our efforts in this arena. While we are exploring whether it may be more effective to hire mental health promotion experts who can work on environmental and population-wide interventions, if so, we may reallocate some of our positions to the school when we have resignations or when we have a clearly identified set of recommendations and goals. Another challenge that we anticipate is lack of adequate space. We are currently in search for a new home. CAPS is currently housed in Snell Hall, and we have been fortunate to be able to acquire additional space as our staff and programs have grown. In addition to the 5th floor, CAPS has also found a conference room and 5 group rooms on the 3rd floor. While this is helpful to our program, we also recognize that Snell is not an ideal place to be housed because of great problems the building has itself. CAPS has entertained several options for alternative housing. Some of these options would be standalone options, and others would be joint housing with offices such as Rec Sports, Veterans Services, HSRC, and Family and Child Care Services. Some options involve renovation and remodeling existing spaces, while others involve new construction. None of these are currently available. However, it is likely that we may not be able to find a satisfactory alternative for quite some time. Now, Tim Daniel will be presenting the decision packages.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Daniel. Decision packages. We believe these decision packages are what are going to support the CAPS program during this next year. And that will, in turn, better serve the students, and we hope that you all agree with the packages that we're going to put forth tonight. So these packages that we're putting forth come with the understanding that students will not incur any additional student fees if we're granted funds from additional enrollment, and we can also use our reserves to support these projects as well. That's because our working capital reserves have grown significantly over the last several years because we were using FTE instead of headcount to prepare the budgets. That mistake's been corrected. And then last year we developed a proposal to spend down these reserves that was only partially implemented. We passed two packages, the first one hiring 2 additional staff members, and the second one hiring 1 additional intern. A third package was passed that created equity adjustments for professional faculty that we have not been able to implement yet, because the university has been involved in the process of reviewing job categories and salaries for professional faculty. And CAPS has been asked to wait until this is completed before making the adjustments. As a result, our projections for working capital are not quite as what we expected, and so Josh is going to fill you in on the rest of that when his turn comes around. So the packages that we're presenting right now are the mandatory increases in assessments and professional salary, and after-hours mental health counseling, another office specialist position, and the employment of students to focus specifically on marketing. So, first is the mandatory increases. OSU plans to give raises to employees for this next budget cycle, and so we budgeted for those increases. In addition, the cost of assessments from the state and OSU has also increased as well. So we recommend that these costs be covered by the increased enrollment because it would be a large amount to cut from the budget, and since most of our budget goes to staff, cutting this from the budget would likely mean we have to decrease the amount of staffing that we have. The benefit to funding this package is that students get to keep the same level of staffing and continue to have the similar access to CAP services that we've had previously, and students' mental health needs continue to be met. Okay. So, CAPS provides really great care for students' mental health needs, but it only occurs during business hours between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. So, and frequently, mental health crises happen outside of these hours, and right now, if students call outside the hours, they were just referred to a national hotline. So, to fix this sort of problem, we've located an excellent resource called Protocol, and it's based out of Portland, and it provides after-hours mental health counseling to other universities and other businesses across the country. One of these is the U of O, so don't let that throw you off. It is still a very good service. They are staffed by licensed mental health professionals, so these are professionals giving out this help, and they can help individuals who are in crisis as well as those who just need brief support. The company will provide a report of all the calls, so CAPS can follow up with students the next day if that's something that's needed. The advisory board recommends that we provide mental health counseling for students on a 24-hour basis, and that hiring a company to provide these services is an effective solution, as CAPS could not provide a similar service for similar costs. The benefit for students is that CAPS becomes a 24/7 service, and students will be able to talk to a mental health professional anytime, day or night. And because, like I said before, frequently mental health crises happen outside of business hours, having these resources available for whenever people need them will go a long way towards serving students. So, CAPS has experienced a significant increase in growth over the last several years, and we've hired more professional staff to handle that growth. And as our need and our staff have grown, our administrative needs have grown as well. So right now we have 2 OS2 staff that have consistently working up to 2 hours of overtime per day, and they're still not finishing everything that needs to get done. So the advisory board recommends that CAPS hires another full-time office specialist position to provide that additional support. Recently, one of our office specialists resigned, citing the workload as part of a reason for leaving, and so we are in the process of hiring a replacement. And if this package gets passed, we can hire 2 candidates from the same pool, saving us the cost of time. Saving us the cost and time associated with doing a second search. The benefits to students is that they'll receive better reception services, and council will be able to continue the courtesy services like reminding students of appointments, and tasks that don't require terminal degrees can be performed by an OS2 rather than a professional faculty. Finally, we have student employment. So one challenge that counseling services regularly face is how to reach people who struggle with mental illness. There is still a tremendous stigma and bias against mental illness, and often people who struggle don't get treatment because of this prejudice. Finding ways to communicate with students about mental health is an aspiration that CAPS has had for some time. We know that having a compelling message is essential, but how we deliver that message is equally important. So that's why the advisory board recommends that we hire 2 students from OSU's business school or other programs to lead an effort to reach out to students in innovative ways and to inform the community of the services, the effectiveness of counseling, mental health, and wellness information. The benefit for students is that CAPS will be better positioned to move out of simply providing remedial clinical services after a mental health issue emerges and engaging in mental health promotion. Just as students want to learn how to take care of themselves physically, we believe students would be interested in learning how to take care of themselves both psychologically and emotionally. So those are the decision packages that we're putting forth. Josh Wilmart's going to come up and tell you all about the budgets and numbers and stuff.
Do you mind if I sit down in front of a computer so I can actually read off numbers instead of like creating to the side?
Yeah.
Is that fine?
Yeah.
So as Tim said, I'm Josh Wilmarth, and I'm going to be going over the budget figures. For this part of the presentation, it might be helpful to have the correction packet out. I think we passed out 2 packets, and it should be one with letters stapled to the top.
And the letters should have signatures. We have 2 packets, so the one with signatures on the front.
I'll be giving the fiscal presentation and an outline of things I'm going to be talking about. First of all, some assumptions. One of the assumptions is, as Tim spoke about, we do have an increase in mandatory fees. No matter what happens, we would be reducing our fee. Our fee is currently set at $35.23 per student per term. And then one of the big assumptions is that we are going to have several corrections in our proposed budget that are going to impact a lot of line items and scenarios. And I think Jackie wanted to say something about that before we begin.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you all know that, we came to understand that we had 2 errors in our budget after we submitted it. And so first, I just want to apologize to you for not getting you the correct numbers and things like that. And I just want to take responsibility for that. My board has done a great job, so it's not a reflection on them or AABC. So I just want you to know that. So the 2 things that you're going to really notice that are different are, one, our line items reduced really more by $27,003 instead of what you saw on the summary sheet, which was $21,400. And so it's an additional reduction of about $5,000. So just so you know, we're cutting a little further than what we indicated. And then the second is a more significant error that we simply missed a complete salary and OPE in the budget. We hired somebody after we had completed the salary projections, and we simply forgot to put that person in. They started late December, and we had finished this up in early December, and so didn't catch it until after we had submitted the materials. So I take responsibility for that and apologize again. We don't think it's going to affect our ability to meet our budgetary needs because of our fund balance, and Josh will talk more about that in detail. But again, my apologies, and you have corrected materials in front of you.
And going off of those corrected materials, I have updated the presentation accordingly to present both the proposed budget that we submitted to the fees committee last week, as well as the corrections that we submitted to you guys this week. So we are presenting a total of 3 budget versions. Starting off, we have base budget 1. We were asked by the fees committee to put together a budget that had no increase in revenue, so this is the flat budget. In order to accomplish that with increased enrollment, we would be dropping our fee to $33.59. We do, however, have an increase in total expenses, which means that we'd be bringing about $228,000 a year out of the fund balance. Currently this year, we're bringing it down by about $140,000 a year. Because we'd be going to the fund balance by $228,000 a year, there would be no funding for additional services. For base budget 2, this is one where we would have some money from increased enrollment. We would, however, be slightly reducing our fee because enrollment has gone up so much. So we'd be dropping our fee by about 23 cents, which is about $17,000 a year. We'd have the same increase in expenses as base budget 1. And in this scenario, with the increased revenue, we would be going into fund balance by about $122,000 a year. With this budget, we think it is possible to fund our decision packages. So if we were to fund decision packages with base budget 2, we would still have the decreased fee to $35 per student per term. Funding all of these packages, we'd be going into fund balance by about $208,000 a year. So now I'm going to cover the expenses, comparing what was approved for this year, FY13, to what we're proposing for next year. These expenses are the same over base budgets 1 and 2. Also, if you guys had any questions about specifics or wanted to follow along, the third page in the updated packet has the approved 2012-13 budget, and then the next page, fourth page, is budget 1, and the page after that is budget 2. And these have everything broken out into line items. Everything is summarized in there. So if you have any questions after, we can go over individual line items. But for this, I pretty much summarized stuff. So these expenses, as I said, are the same for base budgets 1 and 2. You'll see there are things highlighted in yellow. Those are things that were corrected with the extra $70,000 in salary that was left out for the SAS coordinator, as well as about $38,000 in OPE for that position. So we're comparing FY13 approved to what we're proposing for FY14, and then that column next to it, FY14 corrected, is what would actually be happening if these budgets were approved. So you can see from what was approved last year to what we're proposing for this year, unclassified salaries are increasing by about $62,000. Classified salaries are going up at around $2,600. Student salaries are the same. So current year to what we're proposing for next year, total salaries would increase by about $64,000. Most of this is due to mandated increases in OSU salaries raises. And you'll see we have about $103,000 broken out as undistributed equity. And these are things, these were raises that were granted by the fees committee last year, but haven't been pushed through because, as Tim said, OSU is currently reviewing professional faculty salaries. So this money has just kind of been held in limbo for the last year because it hasn't been allowed to be actually paid out to the people, even though the raise was granted last year. For OPE, pretty much everything goes up across the board. You'll see the corrected number is higher than the proposed number because, once again, we're adding in that $38,000. All these figures are, however, correct in the updated package that has the signatures on it. So OPE goes up $57,000, salaries up $64,000. For both base budgets 1 and 2, other expenses, there were some slight changes. Minor equipment decreased by about $12,000 for the next budget cycle. Building maintenance and repair decreased $5,000. And then we were able to cut about $9,800 from other, which is marketing expansion, office, and operating supplies. We did, however, have an increase in a line item. Assessments went up this year. These are things that are charged by the state of Oregon as well as OSU. Just being a department on campus, you get assessed fees. So looking at the total other expenses that were approved for the current year versus for what we're proposing, that would decrease by about $21,000. Looking at revenue for what was approved this year to projected for next year, this is for base budget 1. This is the flat fee. So as you can see in the table, student fee revenue is pretty much the same. We went from 71,000 term students to about 74,475. Because we had that increase to keep the budget, or to keep revenue flat, we had to lower the fee. So base budget 1 results in the fee being lowered $1.64 per student per term, which is about 5%. We also have other revenue, which is interest off of investments, which rises by about $13,000. Base budget 2 does have a significant increase in revenue due to increased enrollment. We would still be lowering our fee by about 23 cents per term. This was decided on before we had to make the budget corrections. When we decided on lowering that fee in this decision package, it would have resulted in a flat budget. So in this scenario, originally base budget 2 wouldn't have had us going into our fund balance at all. But because we had to add in that salary and OPE for that position that was left out, it shifted how things were viewed, which it's kind of weird for us to be like, oh, we're lowering our fee, but we kind of needed that money anyway. So just a quick summary of revenue minus expenses, looking at base budgets 1 and 2. And this is probably what's most important about our presentation is what's happening with our fund balance. So looking at the top table, base budget 1, if you look at the bottom line for fiscal year 13 approved, this year we're approved to go into our fund balance at about $140,000 a year. With the corrected base budget 1, we would be going into the fund balance by about $227,000 a year. So that's about $87,000 more a year that we're going into the fund balance. At that rate, we wouldn't be able to fund additional services. However, with base budget 2, we'd only be going into fund balance by about $122,000 a year, which is actually $18,000 less than we're approved to go in this year. And this will make more sense when I show fund balance projections, which are right here. So this first one is the fund balance projection if base budget 1 were approved. So for FY13, that $1.5 million is the amount that will be left in our fund at the end of this year. However, we only need $342,000 to be kept as working capital. So we're trying to draw down this fund balance in a way that benefits students the most. So with base budget 1, you can see that fund balance is being drawn down pretty significantly. By the end of FY13, the amount in the fund balance pretty much matches what is needed for working capital. So at that point, there really isn't any excess fund balance.
Is this the $35 a fee or $35.23?
This is base budget 1, so it should be $33.69.
Oh, okay.
So this is the one with flat revenue.
Yes.
So base budget 2, this is a fee of $35 with no decision packages. So in this scenario, at the end of FY17, we still have about $1 million in our fund balance, and we only need $488,000 for working capital. So we have $500,000 extra in there, and that is an amount of money that needs to be spent down in a responsible way. And we would like to do that with our decision packages, which Tim introduced earlier. So to briefly go over the cost of these packages, the after-hours mental health care, that would run us about $10,200 a year. I think most of the paperwork is ready to go on that. That would be implemented pretty much as soon as possible. The OS2, Office Specialist 2, for a 12-month full-time position, $28,000 in salary, $24,000 in OPE. And then the marketing student positions, $22,000 in salary, $660 in OPE, and that's for 2 half-time student positions. The cost of the mandatory increases in salary and assessments, while they may be listed as a decision package in the summary material, they're not listed on here because they're factored into all of the budgets because it's not something that you can just not approve. They have to be paid. So this is summarizing the impact of the decision packages on base budget 2. The two, you can compare what was approved last year to what we're proposing, but I think it's, in this context, pretty much already requesting base budget 2 should move forward. So if you're comparing base budget 2 to that package, or to base budget 2 with the package, so the 2 center columns there, the impact of the decision packages increases salary 50,000, increases OPE 24,000, other line items, which is where the after-hours service goes, increases 10,000. So then if you look at fund balance for the FY13 corrected, would be going into fund balance $122,000 a year, and then once you apply the decision packages, you'd then be going into fund balance by about $208,000 a year. So this is the fund balance projection of base budget 2 with the decision packages. So this is the fee at $35. So this is if we were lowering our fee. Base budget 2 was approved, which is more revenue from increased enrollment, and then all of our decision packages were moved forward. So by the end of FY17, our excess fund balance would only be about $130,000. We believe that doing this really spends down that fund in a responsible way. We're providing additional services to students. CAPS is growing in a responsible way, and we're spending down our fund balance. So then just a quick summary. For base budget 1, which is the flat revenue budget, this one has the largely decreased fee, about 5%. We're paying for mandatory increases. However, we can't offer new services, and we would be drawing down the fund balance quickly without really benefiting students. Base budget 2, this is the one with more revenue from increased enrollment, a slightly decreased fee for the reasons I previously talked about, still paying for the mandated increases. No new services would be funded out of this, and it doesn't really effectively draw down the fund balance. However, when you add the decision packages to that budget, because we believe this budget is pretty much the most sustainable one, add the decision packages to that, we would be able to pay for these new services, as well as effectively draw down the reserves, with some still remaining at the end of FY17. Now, question and answers, with, I guess, if you have questions for the board members, and then if you have anything for Jackie as well.
Are you done with the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks. Yeah, now, open up to the committee for any questions.
Do you want us to all come up here, or?
No, you don't need to.
Okay.
I did have it, so, can you go back to the one where you, the graph where you show?
Yeah.
fund
If you have any
balance?
questions about all this stuff, I can just stay up here and
So
go
we'll
over
look
it.
at that.
This one.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh,
Budget, base budget 2 decision package?
Yeah.
yeah. That one.
We have two fees. We have it at 35 and then 35.23.
Okay, so I'm guessing on the packet you handed us, it's the last page is the $35 one?
It's also.
Last page is 35.23.
And that's just for the last two scenarios. On the last fund balance.
Yeah, the last page is 35.23, and the second to last page is $35.
That doesn't make sense because it okay, gotcha.
The numbers,
Okay, gotcha.
the blue line should be ending fund balance, not total fund balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's why I was confused.
Do you have a graph for the fee at 35.23?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So just,
I guess why didn't you decide to be a little more aggressive and try to get closer to the 500,000?
I was on this board last year, and what we got from SAFC then was that we needed to be spending down this excess money in a way that was like responsible to students. It just kept growing and growing every year. So last year we moved forward with adjusting wages and things like that to start spending it down. So we're OUS specifies you need to have so much working capital on hand, and in FY17 it would be about $500,000. So if we were trying to draw it down over 5 years, we'd want to be close to that number.
Wait, hold on, can you go to the $35 fee?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's still about $140,000 off.
Yeah.
And I guess my concern would be because for like the last two, at least actual years, fiscal 11 and 12, there's been excess at the end of the year. And as you said, one of the decision packages we approved last year, you haven't implemented it yet, the equity adjustments,
Yeah.
right? And then also, I think, in OS2, didn't someone quit? OS2,
Yes.
yeah.
So
'cause
that
so now you need to
position-
hire 2 of them.
Yes, yes.
So I guess my concern would be that it's not aggressive enough, because I would feel that what we passed last year, your budget you'll end up more under budget than what we approved, is just maybe kind of like a guess of mine, just from some decision packages not going through or not, implementing one of the decision packages. And and you need to hire now 2 people instead of just 1.
So their salary is going to
Can I
be.
respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that we're gonna get to implement our equity adjustments yet this year, and that they'll be retroactive and we'll use them.
Okay.
So OSU is engaged in this, essentially looking at job families and compensation. So they've asked us to wait until they're finished, but what we've been told is that they plan to be finished with that process in fall. They bumped that to the end of winter. But if that's finished by winter, then we should be able to go forward with that.
Okay, it would be retroactive.
And that's what we've discussed with HR, that,
Okay.
since they were approved, and it was your intention that they be allocated this year, that we would try to do that. Now, if it goes into
No.
next year, for some reason this process drags out, then we wouldn't be able to do that. We would just have to start with a new fiscal year.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so one of the things I just wanted to point out, while we still have 140,000 left over, the next year, we're still gonna have to dip into reserves by that 200,000. So the next year, the fee is gonna have to go up. And what we're trying to do is essentially make sure that our growth comes along, and we've estimated that pretty conservatively, because we don't wanna hit you in FY18 with a $1.50 increase or something like that. So we're trying to actually not do it very aggressively, because we're concerned about the implication for students in a few years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So can I ask a few questions about that actually? Okay. So for the first question, talking about conservative estimates for growth for the student population in relation to the actual fee, that accompanied by a less aggressive kind of like spend down, right? Even though like you talked about doing it in a very responsible way that's appropriate use of student fees. Do you think that that's going to lead to the point that if you are really conservative with those estimates and you're not as aggressive with your spend down estimates, that when you actually end up having 5,000 more, 2,000 more, 1,500 more students than you had estimated, that you're going to just go back to increasing that same type of gap?
Exactly. That's why we really have to look at this every single year.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're staying on our target and really approaching it, because that absolutely could happen. The president said that he really wants to slow down this aggressive growth, and that he's got a cap for what he hopes to
Sure.
have here at OSU in terms of numbers of students.
Yeah.
So, we're trying to we're trying to play it safe.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, because we don't want to overestimate or underestimate too much. But you're exactly right, that if we aren't aggressive enough, then we wind up not spending it down. But it looks like we're gonna,
Yeah.
and Alex,
So-
you can chime in too on this. I think we're trying to shoot that middle.
What Jackie's saying is exactly correct, is we really need to look at this year by year, and that's why it's important to update these 5-year plans, because we just don't really know where enrollment will be every year, so.
Yeah, like if they
Yeah.
wouldn't let us do the equity adjustments, that's like $130,000.
Sure.
So
And that's really why I brought it up, is just to make sure that, just wondering if that's kind of like a part of the conversation within budgeting, that it really, like, you have to take a very close look each year and figure out if that level is going to be appropriate. I think Vandiver has something.
Yeah, I was just wondering, are there ideas in mind when next year rolls around, this turns out to not be an aggressive enough spend down on ways to use that money?
I think there'd be a couple different scenarios. One would be to really look at what the needs of CAPSIT is. So we know that we would love to expand our mental health promotion. So we might hire in that area. Or it might be more beneficial just to lower our fee again. We're suggesting to lower it a little bit here, again, conservatively, but level appropriate to what your needs are that way. And I think it's gonna be really helpful having changed our line items, because we used to have things in kind of pots, we didn't know exactly where things were going, so I think this is gonna make it clear about, okay, this line can actually decrease, because we're not using it, or like with, a couple of the lines that we showed, we could drop that $12,000, okay, then we should do that. So overall, the other expenses dropped 27,000, so we're trying to get a more accurate read of what we really are spending and how much we really need that way.
So I have one other question then about, or the deals with the fund balance. And so the third measure, right, you know, that one's easy and it can be retroactive potentially with equity pay. So that's awesome. But with the first two, I believe, Tim, when you were talking about it, you mentioned the positions, the intern positions, as well as two other full-time staff. Is that correct? As far as what was approved through ASOSU and SIC last year, correct? In order to help spend down the fund balance? Okay, so what I'm wondering then is, with the position that was kind of left out from the budget, that's now going to be, instead of approving it or writing a new budget for it, it's going to be paid for basically using the fund balance. Was that one of the positions that was created there, or is that entirely, okay, that's what I thought. So under that circumstance, if you're paying for those other positions with fund balance, you're also currently paying for the position that was left out of the budget with fund balance. Is that something that will happen every year or in this plan? Or is that just for this year, and then next year you're going to come back with a different fee level because you'll be incorporating that $100,000 or whatever that was left out because the position was left out?
Do you want me to take this?
I could kind
You wanna
of
take
take
it?
that. This year, because of just increased enrollment, we were getting an extra, I think, $118,000, and
So
so
it wasn't projected for, right? The wha-
Yeah, and lowering our fee, we'd
Okay.
be getting another $118,000. If this continued next year, that position that was left out, salary
Doesn't
plus
matter.
OPE was right around 108,000.
Okay.
So if growth continued, and growth has been projected really conservatively, I think
Mhm.
we'd be fine next year. Really wouldn't be an issue at all.
Those two positions from last year and the intern position are already worked into the budget.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not worked into the fund balance, they're just worked into the overall budget. And then
Okay.
the overall budget, if you look, has
A
a
lower than the
red
actual,
number in
yeah.
parentheses,
Yeah.
so that's what we're,
And that's what you're referring to with the 2 of 3 measures that had already been enacted when it talks about within the report? Okay, that's what I thought.
yeah, those folks are already hired.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
okay. And so when you include the kind of responsible, you know, pay down basically, or, you're just doing it by taking the overall amount of what you actually need and having a smaller actual, okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you.
Do you have a time frame at all for those two OS2 positions?
We are reviewing applications now, so one we have to, it's just a
Have to hire one.
replacement
Yeah, yeah.
position. And I think that we could begin interview, we've culled our pool, so we're down to, 15 folks. We need to do a second call, and we could be interviewing as soon as next week, I think, if we wanted to be, but we want to be sure that we're aligned with what you're hoping for us.
Okay. What about the one that's being approved? We just start with
That one, I would just like to hire 2 people out of the pool if we can.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it'd be immediate. Okay.
It's out of the same pool, so to be able to hire them both at the same time then, right? Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
that
that
helps
would
with
have a little impact on this year's budget too,
Yeah.
even though they're approving it. for
But if
next
you had a
year.
certain amount of time, how long has it been since you had a position quit? Because you're gonna have
Oh, yeah.
that revenue there from salary and most likely OPE that's sitting there that would make it either at this year look higher, like Brad, you were talking about, how you expected that
That's
they would
true.
be under budget because of not having that position filled. But then if you did have for, 3 months or 2 months of the year, or however long it ends up being, 5 months, whatever, of the fiscal year, that could be potentially, because it's the same pay rate, or, right, because it's the same classification. It's gonna be OS2?
Yep,
Okay.
we're estimating that, so we're never really sure what the pay rate's gonna actually come in at. It depends on experience,
Yeah.
what step they come
Yeah.
in. But we should have plenty to cover because our 2 full-time folks didn't start until the school year,
Yeah.
so they weren't paid over summer because they couldn't start until a little later because of their other positions. So
Okay.
we should be good in terms of being able to cover that additional
Yeah,
salary.
yeah, I'm sure you've got, I just wonder how that might actually
Mhm.
impact your actual
Yeah.
for this year.
And it probably wouldn't impact it a lot. The salary plus OBE for an OS2 is right around 50,000 a year. So the percentage of the budget that would be impacted if they weren't there for, a fourth of the year is about $12,000. That's
Yeah, that's right.
in the grand scheme of a $2.5 million budget, it's not a whole lot of money to get hung up on.
Mhm. I would like to say, I thought your decision packages were laid out very clearly. So that really helps for
Yeah.
these presentations, because those can sometimes take a long time.
I was here last year.
So, thank you. Yeah.
Can I also say as well as in reference to trying to work down that fund balance in a responsible way, in a way that's appropriate use of student fees, so students actually feel the impact, of the work you're doing. I think that including the student positions, particularly with the two marketing student workers, 2 half-time positions for the year, is a really it's a unique, but I think a good way to incorporate maybe something that CAPS is currently lacking as far as kind of that outreach and marketing aspect. So to reach more students, so they can actually be using maybe for some of the students that aren't currently using, to give them, maybe they'll be more aware of it and able to use them. I also think it's a good way to incorporate student fees into those positions.
You said that for mandated costs, student pay didn't go up at all?
It
There's
should
no minimum
because
wage.
because of the change in minimum wage, right? So,
Yeah, they wouldn't be underclassified though, would they?
No. Things were condensed.
Yeah,
Yeah, so salaries were, oh no, they weren't condensed, that was under OPE. I'm not sure, I guess if they were being paid at higher than minimum wage, there's not a mandated increase.
No.
That's the only thing I could think
That's,
of.
that's what I was gonna follow, because on this, it shows, it does break out the classified, unclassified, it doesn't show the student pay, so that's why I was wondering. Are your students paid at minimum wage? What's that? Increasing?
it
Or-
shows it remaining flat.
So then they're not
except for
paid.
decision packages. But there is a student pay line.
Yeah,
And
I
all
saw
of our
that.
students
I was
make-
just looking at the mandated increases line.
Yeah, and that, all of our students are making more than minimum wage,
Yeah,
so,
so then, okay.
we try to give them raises,
Yeah.
but they're not mandated raises.
Yeah.
Wait, so, they're paid above minimum wage, you said? Okay.
Yeah, so it
it's-
wouldn't affect them anyway.
It's not linked, you don't link their pay, you don't link their pay to minimum wage?
We link it to the necessary skills to
Okay.
do the jobs, because almost all of our student employees have particular skill sets that we're looking for. So it's a graphic designer or somebody to, for example, GTAs who are doing work with statistical programs to help us with our assessment package for assessment protocols, things like that.
Mhm.
So it's, most of it's pretty skilled work, and so we
Yeah.
try to pay them as generously as we can.
Okay. One thing on your position, submission on part of your budget, I don't think the students are on here.
They're not.
Yeah, I'd say I guess for next year, if you can include them, so, yeah, it just helps a little bit. Cause then the ultimate thing we want is that the total from this will equal the total on your actual budget summary, so that makes it really transparent and everything.
Okay, that was our fault, Brad, we did not
Oh.
include any students on any of the exhibit Bs.
Oh, that's all right. Oh. Oh, we did? Okay,
We just did unclassified and classified,
okay,
so that was ours to that.
okay, never mind on that. What's that?
But
Yeah.
we wouldn't know from the AABC perspective of hours and students and
Okay.
like per unit based pay or anything like that.
Okay, so it's something we can not do in the future, or we could?
I'd recommend 2 different documents.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Okay, fine.
Hmm.
Okay. All right, yeah.
I have a question,
Uh-huh.
about I really like the having an after hours mental health, but would there be any connection between that and the student care team, or is that completely separate?
So we actually included the student care in the discussion of after-hours care. And what protocol can do is, let me back up. Our decision was to at least start with a pilot of mental health care. So that's why we're suggesting this. Protocol absolutely provides all kinds of services. So they are kind of like an EAP for some businesses. They do crisis work for a number of schools after hours. Some schools have them on board 24/7, so that if our receptionist is talking on the phone, it automatically rolls over for a counselor to pick up. So there are lots of different models. And one of the models that they have available to us, if we want to pursue it down the line, would be to have a second line. And in that second line, what we could provide is a service where anybody from the community could call to say, I have concern about another person, which is what we, as a student care team, thought, ooh, that could be a really beneficial thing to think about. Because right now, OSU doesn't have any kind of way to take information about a concern about another person that's kind of a cohesive one place, you know? So I think that that's something that we would certainly consider, and it wouldn't be a very large additional cost. I think it's probably, to add another line, is about $3,000. So the student care team could actually benefit by us going first, and then they kind of ride on our coattails because we have a contract already with them. And so it's something that I think they're open to, but we weren't prepared enough to know how we would use that well to implement it now. But we at CAPS were ready with the after hours. We knew how we would use it, and we were able to develop all of the different protocols we would need for all the different scenarios, whereas student care team isn't quite at that place yet. So, but down the line, I think that could be a great thing. Or we might have the SAS line be staffed by somebody, so that would be another way to have an additional line. So we've been thinking about ways to utilize it, because it's a really pretty inexpensive outsourcing option. Because to do it in-house would be, the cost would just be too much. You would have to have a couple people in case there were an emergency and somebody needed to be on the phone to the police, and then you're talking 4 FTE. And you just, for $10,000, this is a really good deal. So it's what we were thinking. And so for not very much more, you can add lines.
Thank you. I'm really excited for that.
Do you have any like advertising budget to encompass that?
To go with it?
Yeah.
We didn't ask for that.
Okay.
So, but we do need to think about how do we begin putting this out there to the community that we're now a 24/7 service, and that somebody can talk to an OSU counselor, because they're in our employment through this contract. So we wouldn't need to be talking about it being protocol. They're calling CAPS, they get a counselor, we're following up with them the next day. So so we're in the process of kind of figuring out how do we want to share this with the community so that students are aware that this is available.
And the 2 additional student workers doing that marketing work could probably make a lot of inroads on this if they have expertise on reaching students. This could be one of their first campaigns to take, be promoting this new service.
Yeah.
We did a pretty big splash when we moved to same-day appointments a couple of years ago. You may not be aware, but we used to schedule all of our first-time appointments out, and they got scheduled out like 3 or 4 weeks, and then students didn't come. It was a mess. So now we do it all by same day, and we did a really big, aggressive splash with students, faculty, staff to say we're changing the way we're serving our students. Here's so we have a template for how to go about doing that around this too.
With the second office specialist, would you still continue to do same-day appointments in the same format?
It'd just be easier, because right now our folks are going crazy trying to answer the phone at 8:30.
Yeah.
So I think we would just handle those calls in a more timely, effective way.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about what's going to be different, like over the summer, and how you're going to use your summer fee? Just different than.
And why it's not different than.
Well, yeah, but just what the differences are going to be, how it's going to be spent differently. Like, so maybe different people are on staff, or.
we actually keep most people on staff, but our work
It's strange that
changes
it doesn't
really
go down.
significantly from the school year to summer. So our clinical traffic actually drops off a bit, quite a bit, because we just don't have as many students here at OSU. But what we find ourselves doing are a lot of administrative tasks, like we're closing files, we're being sure that we are wrapping up care in appropriate ways. We're transferring folks to where they're going to be over the summer. So there's a lot of administrative tasks. And then we're also in the throes of doing annual reports, assessment work, preparing for new programs that are going to get off the ground. We have an intern class that's leaving and another intern class that's coming on, and then we prep for our practicum students to join us as well. So it's not really a slow time. It used to be slower, but people in the office are like, it's not slow anymore. So we're just doing different kinds of tasks, but ones that are really essential to, one, making sure that students have good clinical care and that they've been transferred effectively if they need to be transferred. And two, we have a chance to review our year. And assessment work is really important to us. You guys got, a lot of information about our assessment work, and so that's when we can do it, because during the school year we're seeing students back to back for the most part. Is that?
Yeah.
Does anyone from the committee have any more questions for Jackie or anyone else that has talked to them?
Motion.
Okay. And then I guess around the number, to me it would seem that the $35 would be the, seems like we can go down to that.
The difference is about $17,000. It's not.
For this next upcoming year?
For the whole year. So it's not a lot of money. It has a small effect, as you saw, on the fund balance. And there wouldn't be as big a gap in FY18, but it's not cumulative. Josh, do you remember?
Can we see that again, actually, the two
Yeah.
graphs?
That was an awesome graph.
That's what I was thinking of, just the compounding effect it have on FY17, but it's not, it's still fine,
The
so.
issue that I was seeing that Tyler kind of raised is what happens in FY18. I mean, these numbers are great that the working capital is going down, but if you have these programs that are going to need to be funded each year, the fee at some point is going to have to go up, or the programs are going to have to go down at this rate.
Yeah.
That's why we have to look at it every year. For instance, this year when we were doing the budgeting process, things were balanced out a lot differently because that other position wasn't added in there. So next year, if everything, because we pretty much would have had almost a balanced budget to where we really weren't going into fund balance very much. We were still providing all of the services that we need to students and still lowering the fee. I think going forward with, if growth continues even pretty slow pace, we would still be pretty good with that. And looking at it every year, we'd be like, oh, it's going to go up in this many years. We may want to start increasing the fee now. That way the fund balance gets drawn down a little slower as you get to the point of actually running out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's just like, obviously for this year it seems to be okay, but that is something that's definitely going to need to be addressed in the next couple of years. It's just looking at how to bring those two together without suddenly having a fee explosion.
I think you're absolutely right, because I think that's the thing we really want to avoid. And so one of the things I want you guys to hear is that we feel really good about where we are clinically. We've grown a lot in terms of number of FTE for clinicians. I don't think we're going to see that kind of need, because I think the growth in the student population is really going to slow down. So we're about where we need to be that way. It's not perfect yet, but it's really close. And I think if we could get a couple other things, staff, then CAPS would be really good, But you're exactly right, that if we can do that over time with added enrollment and not have to hit with a fee, then that's a better way to go.
Well, I think that, at least from the projections and, hearing discussion from all of you, the level that we're looking at like this, like looking at like budget 2 with those decision packets, even working on finding a responsible way to work down some of that working capital, it's still at an appropriate level with the conservative estimates for enrollment, growth, that at that level that you should be able to, basically, be within the same type of operation, correct? Yeah.
There will come a point, though, at some point where the reserves are gone,
Yeah.
and then we have to figure out what our next steps are. So,
That was the issue.
and that's the piece where I don't want those lines crossing,
Mhm.
because then we're in trouble, I think, for the next year. And I'm really so confident in the advice that we're getting from AABC. They've got our backs and they've got your backs, and they're really doing a good job at helping us track this and spend this down in a way that's going to be responsible.
Definitely.
Well, that wasn't me saying something, I just.
Is there any more discussion? Well, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move to tentatively approve the fall, winter, spring, and summer fee at $35
Second.
with all 4 decision packages.
So say base budget 2 with decision packages?
It's,
Yeah.
let's go with that.
I second.
Cool. We'll move into, yeah. I'd love to do, any discussion on that? All right, then we'll move into a roll call vote. Amelia?
4.
Tyler?
4.
Nick?
4.
Madison?
4.
Tori?
4.
Tara?
4.
All right, so that passes, unanimous vote. So it's set for the tentative approval, set at $35 for fall, winter, spring, and summer. Just thank you for presenting tonight. I just want to remind you, 10 decision, and then we'll, hear you, the SIFC open hearing will begin at 5 p.m. on February 12th in the new ballroom, and that's where we'll set the final fee. Cool.
Thank you very much for
Thank you,
this
everyone.
put together.
Yeah,
We
very-
appreciate that a lot.
Very well put
Process.
together. Thank you.
Thanks for your generosity with us. We really appreciate it.